Good morning. This is Mojado, America's undocumented moto vlogger. And man, it's been a long time since I made a video, but I've got a really good excuse. My GoPro camera was kind of screwed up. I'm not sure exactly what was wrong. It was showing some sort of error with the memory card. I bought a new memory card and that seems to help, but yeah, it's been a while, so let me catch you up on life. Things are going good here in South Texas. I'm still doing the keto diet, trying to get healthy, trying to lose some weight, and I've lost some weight. Feels like quite a bit. I'm not one of those guys that gets on the scale every morning, so I don't really watch that. I pay more attention to how my jeans are fitting. So anyway, things are good. Life is good. Had a good Thanksgiving. Had a good Halloween. Me and Colin went to Amarillo to see my mom. And yeah, life is really good. I hope that the audio on this is not as bad as it has been in the past. It's always been kind of hit or miss with the audio. I found a couple of articles that said it's not really my fault, that there were some design issues with the GoPro camera. I'm using a GoPro 5 Hero, and apparently there's some design issues with the audio on that, so I'm working through it. I may upgrade the camera eventually. But I wanted to talk to you about something that I've been kind of passionate about. My wife and I have been watching this series on Netflix, and I've had people ask me for my opinion, so I'm going to lay it on you. The series is called Making a Murderer on Netflix, and it's the story of a guy in Milwaukee, I'm sorry, not Milwaukee, Manitowoc, Wisconsin. Guy's name is Stephen Avery, and if you're not familiar with the series, I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but he was accused of a murder, and the Netflix producers think that he was set up, and that law enforcement essentially planted some evidence. And I gotta tell you, here's my opinion. The short end of it is I happen to agree with the Netflix producers. I'm seeing some evidence that was collected and presented in this murder investigation that does not make sense to me, and that's my day job. I'm an investigator, and my specialty is forensic science. I am an evidence technician. I'm a fingerprint examiner. I've got training in blood spatter and all sorts of crime scene evidence collection. And man, some of this stuff that they've got in this murder investigation is sketchy, and that's about the best word I can use. We're watching part 2 of the series, and Avery has hired an attorney who specializes in exonerating prisoners, and she is finding out some evidence that literally proves that someone has either planted evidence or falsified it, or it's hard to explain if you haven't watched the series, but if you haven't yet, I encourage you to watch the series. It's interesting, and if you're in law enforcement, I gotta warn you right now, it's gonna make you mad, it's gonna piss you off. I always hate stories where I read about dirty cops, and I'd like to think that most police officers are very honorable guys, very honest guys who are hardworking. But man, this story just really pisses me off. There was blood evidence that looks like it may have been planted. They found some DNA evidence, and when they tested the DNA, the prosecution is claiming that the DNA that they found under the hood of the victim was touch DNA. And let me explain, for those of you who are not familiar with DNA evidence, when we touch anything, we leave little bits of DNA everywhere in the form of skin cells, and also if we're sweating, there's DNA. Granted, there's very little DNA in sweat, very, very little, minute traces of DNA in sweat. Blood and saliva are the best carriers of DNA. And the prosecution is claiming that they swabbed the hood release of the victim's car, and when they analyzed it, you wouldn't believe the huge amount of DNA that they came up with. It doesn't make sense. There's that. There's cell phone tower evidence where it shows the victim leaving the area supposedly where she was killed. And then in the middle of this shady investigation is a district attorney that will just make your skin crawl to watch him and listen to him. This guy, the district attorney on the Avery case, he was all about the publicity. Every time he farted or took a shit, he notified the news media and wanted to have a press conference to tell them all about it and describe it in great detail. Anytime you find a politician, and let's face it, district attorneys are politicians, but anytime you find a politician that is so anxious to get in front of cameras, watch what they do and how they do it. This guy was very eager to put this case to rest, and he's very pissed off that they're trying to petition the courts for a new trial. He's very pissed off about that, especially because it's going to show a huge amount of incompetency on his part. There are suspects that they failed to interview. The ex-boyfriend of the victim was never interviewed. And you don't even have to be a cop or an investigator to figure that one out. If a chick ends up dead, who's one of the first people that the cops are going to want to talk to? They're going to want to talk to the current boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, side guys, whatever. Anyone who was laying down with this chick, they're going to want to talk to. Well, they didn't. They focused on this guy, Stephen Avery. And my wife brings up this point, and it's an excellent point. The defendant in this case, Stephen Avery, is not what you would call an intellectual bad guy. This guy, to call him slow would not be I'm trying to think of a better word for it, but this guy he's just not sharp. I mean, he's a slow guy, and he had a bad reputation within the community. Law enforcement did not like him. He had a $36 million lawsuit pending against the sheriff's department, and before that lawsuit could get started and get going, lo and behold, they've thrown him in jail on this murder. The same department that he filed the lawsuit against. Yeah, that's what I thought. It's a little too coincidental, don't you think? So, very impressive. Guy on a sport bike that can do a wheelie. Woo! No, I can't do a wheelie. Even if I had a sport bike, I couldn't do a wheelie and would not, should not do it. But anyway, I digress, as I usually do. Look at that, blue skies. This morning it was cloudy, overcast, and rainy, cold. It's turned out to be a beautiful day. I'm headed into town. I usually don't like to go into San Antonio, but it's Black Friday, and wanted to go in, run some errands, maybe do a little shopping. This day is sort of a special day. Back in 2013, I survived a shooting. I didn't get shot. I got shot at, and fortunately the bad guy was a lousy shot. He got close. The .45 round that he shot at me ended up in my patrol car. So every time it's the Friday after Thanksgiving, I always like to be thankful that I'm still running around. Could have been a bad night, so I'm very thankful. And that's about it. I wanted to talk about that Making a Murderer series, and didn't really have a whole lot other than I want to be one of those vloggers that are pretty consistent with putting out videos. I haven't been very good at that. Colin, my son, has been wanting to make some more videos, so maybe we'll get going with that now that the camera is working again. But I appreciate you going on this morning's ride with me. I do hope you'll check out the Making a Murderer series if you haven't already. Interesting documentary. I think if you watch it and really pay attention, you'll probably see it the same way that I'm seeing it. Oh, the point I was going to make about Stephen Avery that my wife pointed out, he's just not a sharp villain. He's not a sharp bad guy. He's not the kind of guy who could commit a murder and then hide it really well. You can tell he's not a planner. He's not the sharpest pencil in the pack. He would be the kind of guy who would go. He might be capable of murder. Who knows? Aren't we all? But he would be the kind of guy who would go out and get drunk, and when the cops would find him, he might still have all the blood on him, and he'd be like, "Oops, yeah." But whoever committed this murder tried really hard to not only hide it, but to try to pin it on someone else. Someone moved the victim's car. That part is obvious once you watch the timeline. They moved the victim's car onto the property, an auto salvage yard that was owned by Avery. And then they disposed of the body, which happens a lot in murder investigations. It appears as though they dismembered her and then burned the remains. And but not a lot is adding up. They were finding pieces of her in several different areas. It just doesn't all add up. So I hope you'll watch it and let me know what you thought of the series. And I don't care if you disagree with me, that's fine. Go ahead, and if you have a different opinion, go ahead and disagree with me. Let me know what you thought. But here's wishing that everyone has a safe holiday season. Get out there and ride. Enjoy the decent weather if you have some. Get out on that bike and ride it. That's what I plan to do. I plan to be out here riding as much as I can. Going on a ride tomorrow. Maybe I'll do a little videoing tomorrow also. Maybe a ride through the hill country. This is Mojado, your undocumented moto vlogger, saying be nice to each other, be kind, be safe, and have a great day.
And so we come to the end of another fun-filled episode of Rocky and Bullwinkle.